radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 135, recorded on Sunday, September 29th from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, we make the progressive case for a Kamala Harris presidency. But first, the headlines.
You can do it, baby. I love you so much. Magic. And it's bad news. Bad things are happening. Mom, I'm sorry. Mom, I didn't do it. Boom. Didn't do it.
So I think it's important to start off this week talking about the recent attacks in Lebanon. Last week, reports came in from Lebanon that numerous walkie-talkies and pagers have exploded. The blasts were triggered remotely while individuals were in large crowds, killing at least 32 people and injuring over 3,000. Two of those killed were children. Lebanese officials are saying the attack was done by Israel, alleging they concealed the explosives in the devices to target Hezbollah. And this was a wave of attacks, I believe. Was it 2 or 3?
I know it was at least 2.
Yeah, it was at least 2, but I don't know. I thought there was a smaller third one too, because there was the initial one that rocked everybody, and then there was the funeral one where you had thousands, you had a couple thousand people like together for a funeral, and then a second wave of blasts went off. Mm-hmm. And that's what really caused the chaos and panic. I have an article from New York Times here talking about that second attack. And I just want to read the quote from this article. Then panic set in. People started scrambling in the streets, hiding in the lobbies of nearby buildings and shouting at one another, "Turn off your phone, take out your battery." Soon a voice on the loudspeaker at the funeral urged everyone to do the same. Everyone was afraid that their phone or a phone of the person next to them in the crowd would also soon explode. One woman, Ibrahim, stopped a reporter in the middle of the confusion and begged to use the reporter's cell phone to call her children. The woman dialed the number with her hand shaking, then screamed into the phone, "Turn off your phones now." She said it over and over again. Then she pleaded with her children, "Stay where you are. Don't use your phone."
Terrorism. That's what Israel has resorted to. The very thing that they are constantly complaining about, the despicable tactics of their enemies, they are now
just straight up doing it.
Yeah, stooping to the same level. And these are, they were explosives that were put into devices. It wasn't that the batteries are overheating and exploding like, lithium batteries and all that. It's not that. It's literal explosives that were placed into pagers.
Correct.
And it's kind of a multinational thing. We're not going to get too much into the specifics of this, but I guess somehow they had intelligence that these were going to Hezbollah, but who knows who could have ended up with them since then and now.
Right. And then you had conflicting reports coming out afterwards saying like what was going on. You originally had Israel denying it, or at least not commenting on it. And then they took credit for it while other spokespeople were on air denying it. It's just so much garbage, man. And look, warfare is warfare, but like you said, like this is straight up terrorism. You are killing and injuring thousands of innocent civilians and children. Like I want to make that very clear. Like this is not like a bombing of a base or something like that civilians are just nowhere near. This is straight up guerrilla warfare that one of our supposedly closest allies should not be doing.
When they already have like a gigantic military advantage. And they're using these kinds of tactics, which you normally would suspect from someone on the other end of that kind of advantage.
Right.
That out of desperation, they cannot attack openly, so they do things like this. This is a country that gets so much military hardware and equipment from the West, obviously including the United States, that they are so far above and beyond the capabilities of the countries that they are fighting this seemingly never-ending war against, that these type of tactics are really out of place.
Yeah, they're inexcusable.
Yeah.
Like, it's straight up. It's inexcusable. And it makes me even angrier still. I can't believe it that we're still arguing with Democrats and liberals here who still think that Israel is perfectly righteous in what they're doing.
They have a right to defend themselves.
This isn't defense.
Right.
I include a story here because John Fetterman, proven progressive,
Yeah.
hero to the left, good God,
What a difference a stroke makes.
was asked about these attacks, and he said this, quote, I thought what Israel chose to do about blowing up the pagers and then walkie-talkies, and then after targeting and eliminating membership and leadership of Hezbollah, I absolutely support that. In fact, if anything, I love it. Israel demonstrated that they will not allow terrorists not to be held accountable, and I fully support that. Boy, ain't that ironic.
The terrorists that were attending a funeral and those children that were killed, those little mini terrorists.
But again, like that's the thing. I think it's so ironic that he's saying we gotta hold these terrorists accountable. Okay, so when are we gonna hold these legit terrorists that just held a legit terrorist attack accountable? Or is it just the brown people we don't like here? I don't know if you even saw, I mean, this is going a little bit off base from this as well, but did you see the whole Dana Bash controversy with Rashida Tlaib as well?
Yeah, that they said that Rashida Tlaib...
Like they accused Rashida Tlaib of like anti-Semitism and blaming the AG for not doing her job
of
because
Michigan.
because she's Jewish.
This is like a whole different story. But so what we're talking about is there were student protesters, obviously protesting the violence and war that's going on in Gaza, and they're being prosecuted when other protesters like Black Lives Matter, things like that, were not
charged,
prosecuted. And Rashida Tlaib said that there's obviously some reason that the AG's office is being pressured from the outside to do this.
And specifically, she said from the university.
Right. She said that she thought that it was probably coming from university officials, including the University of Michigan's president.
Right.
And CNN ran a story saying that Rashida Tlaib said that the only reason that Israeli protesters are being prosecuted, pro-Palestinian protesters, is because that the Michigan AG is Jewish, which she never said.
Right. And
Jake Tapper as well.
Yeah, Jake Tapper and Dana. And they doubled down on that, by the way. Like, again, this is supposedly like radical left CNN.
Commie News Network.
Right. I'm just so done having this debate with people who I expect more out of. You know, we talked about this before where if it's just a, brainwashed Republican who all they do is listen to Jesse Waters, like I expect what I expect out of them. But the fact that I'm hearing people who are sounding so insanely hypocritical and then trying to also be an ally, screw off. I'm so done with this. And the evidence just keeps compiling over and over as the days go on.
In our next story, the GOP attempt to change Nebraska's electoral college votes seemingly dead.
Hooray!
And this is a huge deal. The background on this story, Nebraska and Maine are the only states that have the potential to split electoral votes. So you have each district has a vote that could go to either party. Most of the time, Nebraska's go to Republicans, Maine's go to Democrats. But you have Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, which is in the college town of Omaha, which went for Democrats in recent elections, and Maine's 2nd district that went for Donald Trump in the last 2 races. When talk of removing this split vote in Nebraska started, officials in Maine said that they would also make the same change, thus negating the Republican advantage this would give. The GOP then waited until Maine's state legislature adjourned for the year before pressing Nebraska's governor to call for a special session to change their election rules, knowing that Maine's process for special sessions was much more strict and unlikely to happen.
Yeah, so just even clarifying that. So Nebraska's session was also finished.
Right. They can call in a special session. The governor said he would only do it if he knew for sure they had the votes.
Right.
Donald Trump spoke to Nebraska state senators by phone, and Trump lackey, spineless coward Lindsey Graham visited with Governor Jim Pillen and Republican legislators to encourage them to vote to change the current system just 6 weeks before the election in a very naked attempt to further rig the electoral college vote that already favors the minority rule of the Republican Party for presidential elections. And they are also changing the rules in Georgia currently to allow non-certification of the election there, which could also be an issue.
And when I saw news about the Nebraska stuff, like I saw all this messaging about how winner take all is the best way to do this. Don't let the voices of people be heard. And it's like,
but not in Maine.
And it's so blatantly just corrupt. Like, dude.
Right.
And again, like, for the record, while it would be great that Maine would have also like negated it, I wouldn't want Maine to do that either. Like, I am not a fan of winner take all states. So the fact that they're even pushing winner take all, knowing that they're going to try to give them a slight advantage, like, this is how the political game works. Like, they just change the rules if the rules aren't in their favor. And this is how Republicans have been doing it for decades.
But fortunately for democracy, on Monday, State Senator Mike McDonnell, who switched from the Democratic Party to Republican in April because he's a super Catholic that hates abortion, he issued a statement saying he would not vote to change the election law, foiling the GOP plans as they needed all 33 Republican votes to overcome a filibuster in the legislature. That basically puts an end, because the governor has come out and said that they will not be calling for a vote because they do not have the votes. No special session. So it ends the nightmare scenario where Kamala Harris wins Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, but loses Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. If she didn't have that single Nebraska 2nd District vote because they changed their rules the last second before the election, that would leave a 269 to 269 electoral college tie, where Donald Trump would certainly then win the legislative vote, with the GOP advantage in less populated rural states, as well as the gerrymandered legislative control in states like Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy that, again, we see this a lot as well. We're always just this close away.
Yeah.
From just nightmare, horrible scenarios that are just destroying our democratic institutions.
I mean, could you imagine this the other way, where Democrats did this and there was a tie and then a Democrat got the presidency based on like this odd system? There would be, the January 6th would look like nothing.
Well, yeah, I'm like, man, I feel like there'd be constant calls about rigging an election or something
Right.
like that. Well, good. I mean, again, another close one.
Right.
Thank you, Mike McDonnell, for doing the minimum of what's right.
Right. He did call for a vote after the election, a referendum vote to change the Constitution of Nebraska in order to make it a winner-take-all state.
And again, it's like, this is why our electoral system is just never going to be fixed. Next up, some very fun news. New York City Mayor Eric Adams has officially been indicted.
Corrupt Democrat politicians, corrupt Democrat cities.
I mean, yeah, kind of. This is exactly what that is.
It's a long history of corruption in New York City politics.
And for those of you who don't know, New York City Mayor Eric Adams has now been indicted on 5 federal charges related to bribery, wire fraud, and conspiracy and soliciting campaign contributions from foreign nationals. According to the indictment, for nearly a decade, Adams sought and accepted improper valuable benefits such as luxury international travel, including from wealthy foreign business people and at least one Turkish government official seeking to gain influence over him.
He constantly, anytime he would fly anywhere, he would fly into Istanbul first because he wanted to fly on Turkish Airlines because they would basically give him the flights for free.
You mean the New York of Turkey?
He said that for literally every city. Anytime anyone
no, it's the other way around. We're the Istanbul of America.
Yeah. New York is the Istanbul of America. New York is the Dublin of America.
We're the Paris of America.
Yeah, every time anyone would visit, Eric Adams would pull out the wherever they're from, whatever capital city, from their country, that New York is that of America.
He's just so stupid.
Yeah.
He's so dumb. And a large part of this is that Adams allegedly worked with foreign influencers to funnel their money into his 2021 New York City mayoral campaign via straw donors, or legal individuals who claim to be New Yorkers giving their own money. Of course, he didn't disclose any of this, including the luxury travel and all these donors. But not only that, which is blatant campaign fraud, it also defrauded the city because New York has a policy that subsidizes small dollar donations up to 8 times. Basically, they have a policy that to give people who don't have a lot of money more voice in their elections.
Because money is speech, according to the Supreme Court.
Yep. New York City will then give public funds and basically match and over subsidize what you give. So if you give like $25, they may end up giving $200 total to the campaign because they want to amplify your small dollar donation if you're a New Yorker, which means he was getting potentially up to $2,000 per illegal donation and more than $10 million total in public dollars. And this is the same guy who went out and said New York City does not have the money to upkeep their libraries.
Yeah, and they can't take in immigrants. They need help from the federal government. Meanwhile, he's illegally taking bribes from Turkey.
Oh my God. And like I said, he's also just been a complete idiot with this whole thing. Right before the FBI seized his phone, he changed the password on it and then immediately claimed he forgot what the password was as like the magical way to get out of them breaking into his phone. He also forgot about deleting the multitude of text messages that would incriminate him. One example being the exchanging text messages to plan another possible trip to Turkey in which the airline manager would arrange travel to Adams. And then the Adams staffer texted Adams saying, hey, to be on the safe side of this, please delete all messages you send to me. To which Adams responded, always do.
And just a tip for potential criminals out there. When the FBI is investigating you, they're going to just go to the cell phone company and get the server side records. And it doesn't matter if you delete it or not.
But he didn't even delete it. You could try minimal effort.
There was also an exchange from one of his staffers to this Turkish official stating that they wanted to set up this illegal scheme and give him up to $100,000 in donations and, make it look like it's coming from Turkish people living in the U.S.
Yeah.
And the staffer said, well, I don't think that Mayor Adams would go in for this kind of thing, but I'll check with him just in case. And as it turns out, yes, in fact, he indeed was the type of person that would go in for this sort of thing.
Here, let me put this in writing.
Yeah.
To make this deal official. Also, just for more context, the reason why all these Turkish businessmen and officials were doing this was that they were trying to get various zoning rights, property rights, tax benefits. I think an amusement park was also involved at some point.
There was specifically a skyscraper that was built that they used their influence over Eric Adams to get him to give them occupancy without having a fire inspection.
Yeah.
And he literally threatened to fire fire marshals and people involved with the fire department if they did not give them this occupancy without an inspection. So that's a big part of this as well.
Literally could not be more corrupt.
Right. And obviously corrupt because those types of things people notice. And that's what started this whole investigation.
Yeah. In a speech addressed to New Yorkers on Wednesday, Adams vowed to fight what he called the entirely false indictment with every ounce of my strength and my spirit. He also went on to say, I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target, and a target I became.
Well, because of all the corruption and bribes. I guess that's standing his ground for all of us. I think by all of you, he means Turkey.
Oh my God. I will say there were decent progressives running in that race. That didn't get nearly...
They never do well in New York City races.
God.
I don't know why. Supposed to be such a liberal hellhole.
I know.
But yet they constantly
elect the most corrupt
Rudy
individuals.
Giuliani was the mayor of New York City. Those are the types of people that they constantly elect.
Bloomberg,
yeah.
For God's sakes.
It's ridiculous.
And of course, Republicans are flocking to Adams' side now because all they do is support criminals at this point.
Like, oh, you committed a bunch of crimes?
Let us help you.
We like that sort of thing.
Just a couple of tweets. This is from conservative influencers, the Hodge twins. Every politician could be charged with the same crimes. Ask yourself why Eric Adams was singled out.
Every politician is taking bribes from Turkey in exchange for political favors? Somehow I don't think so, Hodge twins.
And Jesse Kelly, who I think is on Newsmax or OAN or something. The DOJ has so destroyed the trust of the American people that they can indict the Democrat mayor of Democrat-run New York, and most of us are all, yeah, this is all revenge for something. Wonder what the real story is. That goes beyond this story. That's a national crisis.
That you are all a bunch of conspiracy-brained idiots? Yes.
I mean, but again,
it is a national crisis. This
so what
is
the
GOP.
So what is it? Is it that Democrats never hold their own accountable and never target their own, or is it that we have some secret cabal that also attacks other Democrats? What is it supposed to be? I don't know what the conspiracy is anymore. Isn't this what you guys wanted? You found a corrupt Democrat and we took him down.
But he's not really corrupt. He's fighting for the Patriots. I don't know what their support is.
I don't know
from.
either.
That's.
Even Trump vouched for him in a recent press conference saying, I watched about a year ago when he talked about how the illegal migrants are hurting our city and the federal government should pay us and we shouldn't have to take them. And I said, you know what? He'll be indicted within a year. And I was exactly right.
And also that sentence doesn't make any sense. The federal government should pay us, and we shouldn't have to take them. Why both of those things?
I don't know. Just when I thought like the story itself couldn't be any dumber.
I think that actually explains a lot of Trump's economic plans.
Can you just give me money and then I not give you stuff for the money?
Right, and then I just not do what that money would normally be for. Yeah.
But I don't know what the conspiracy is anymore, man. I can't keep up. I'll also include as a fun little thing at the end, if you're interested in more stuff and learning more about Eric Adams as a whole, I highly recommend the podcast If Books Could Kill. They did an episode on Eric Adams and showed how he kind of rose to where he is today and how much of an idiot he's always been.
In our final headline of today, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance named in criminal lawsuit over their lies that they keep telling about Haitian immigrants in Ohio. The Haitian Bridge Alliance immigrant group recently invoked a private citizen right, something that Ohio has, to file charges, and these are criminal charges, against Trump and Vance for causing chaos and threats to residents of Springfield, Ohio. This move came after a local prosecutor refused to take action on the matter. As you would probably guess, because this does not immediately trigger some sort of jury trial or hearing, all this does is mean that the Attorney General will have to decide whether they want to formally bring charges. The Attorney General of Ohio.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Who also already said that he was skeptical of these claims to begin with, by the way.
And because of that, this will most likely not go anywhere, just like every other criminal act that Donald Trump has committed throughout his entire life.
Right. I did find a fun little quote from, I can't remember which article it was, but they referenced a Syracuse law professor, Greg Germain, who said this in the article. Knowledge of falsity is difficult to prove when politicians spread rumors. The Supreme Court would likely recognize that politicians have qualified immunity for lies under the First Amendment. Otherwise, the bare-knuckle election process would be hampered. And I just thought, cool? So, like, doesn't matter what happens.
Well, the thing that would make this not just First Amendment protected speech would be the fact that since J.D. Vance and Donald Trump have been pushing these, again, Nazi-started lies, there have been more than 30 bomb threats against schools, government buildings, and city officials' homes in and around Springfield. If your speech is inciting violence, it is not protected by the First Amendment.
Unless you're a billionaire running for president.
Well, and it's a Republican AG in a Republican state, and you're the Republican candidate for president.
I hate our legal system. I hate our judicial system. I hate the whole thing. And I guess as a quick little look into next week, what do you think is going to happen at the VP debate? Do you think they're going to push the same stuff again? They're going to have to, right? Like,
yes.
They've done it too many times now. They can't, J.D. Vance can't now go on national TV and say it's wrong.
Well, and if anything, it's going to be brought up by Tim Walz, and J.D. Vance will have to say that, no, in fact, he has a police report. He'll just repeat the same lies that have already been debunked, that we know nothing has ever happened. The only thing we know of that's come out recently about someone killing someone else's pet is the new president of the Heritage Foundation apparently murdered his neighbor's pit bull.
Oh.
So, you know.
I didn't even hear about that one.
To go along with Kristi Noem and Mitt Romney.
Oh, okay.
RFK Jr. Like, who are the people really killing animals and eating them? It's apparently Republicans.
But I swear to God, I don't remember what station it's on, but if the moderates don't just sit there, okay, we're going to stop for about 5 seconds and then just ask JD point blank, what's going on with this story? And then just refuse to budge from that story for like 10 minutes while he just sits there and lies, I'm going to be very angry, because we already kind of saw that a little bit with ABC and the Kamala Harris and Donald Trump debate.
Yeah, when we saw it when he was on CNN with Anna Bash.
Right, where moderators are so terrified to call it out because they're afraid of looking biased. Stop. I'm so done with you giving credence to this nonsense. So this better get hammered, not just by Tim Walz. This better get hammered by the moderators too. And if not, I'm going to be very angry.
M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, they've won.
Boy ain't right.
For Fox in the Head this week, last week Jason had his
Trumpy Trout
advertisement that
he is the greatest fish without a doubt.
I'm so happy that you know that. Mm-hmm. You've listened to it a couple times, haven't you?
I have.
I wanted to put my own product out there to compete. And I want to say mine's better because mine's officially endorsed by the president. I'm talking about Trump watches, baby. The best watches ever made and the official watch of Donald Trump. For those of you who have not been paying attention, Trump recently came out saying that he is now selling officially Trump brand Trump watches for the low, low price of $100,000. And now I do have a video promoting these watches, and I just want you to listen to it because it's amazing.
Hello, everyone. It's your favorite president, Donald J. Trump, here to introduce something really special. I think you're going to love it. My new Trump watches. We're doing quite a number with watches, and the quality to me is very important. The Trump Victory Tourbillon. This isn't just any watch, it's one of the best watches made. It's a tourbillon watch with almost 200 grams of gold and more than 100 real diamonds. That's a lot of diamonds. I love gold, I love diamonds, we all do. Only 147 of these extraordinary watches will ever exist in the world, and owning one puts you in a very exclusive club. I have watch number one, and I'm gonna keep it. It's mine, and that's the way I wanna have it. Each watch is numbered and extremely rare, a true collector's item, and it includes a personal letter signed by me. Get your Trump watch right now. Go to gettrumpwatches.com. It's Trump time.
It's Trump time.
It's Trump time, baby.
And this, of course, will go along with your Trump shoes and your Trumpy bear.
And your Trump NFTs.
Yep,
your
and
Trump crypto.
Trumpy trout. And we say it over and over and over again, how for some reason conservatives do not see the just obvious con man huckster shill that Donald Trump is. It's so ridiculously obvious.
I can't remember what show I listened to it on, but I remember someone saying the Trump campaign is just devolving into a Fox News commercial.
It's not even a Fox News commercial. It's like a Newsmax commercial. Because they won't even run the MyPillow ads on Fox anymore.
Right. Also, can I just say one of my favorite general styles of ad now, because we've seen a couple of these so far, is like the very intense orchestra music and then just Donald Trump rambling over the top of it.
We all like diamonds, don't we, folks?
Oh, I like gold. I like diamonds.
This watch is so gaudy. If you thought those pictures of Mar-a-Lago were bad, let me tell you, this watch looks like it's going to turn your entire arm green. Yeah, no, it looks so stupid.
So
who wears watches anymore?
I wear watches. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I mean, people wear like Apple watches, but that's about it.
No, I wear the regular watches.
So you
no one can see at home, but Jason is shaking his head at me.
So it's you and everybody that's eating at 4 p.m. for dinner.
What's wrong with a 4 p.m. dinner?
Gotta go to the Old Country Buffet.
Oh, I'm not that depressed. So yes, the Victory Tourbillon watch is now selling for $100,000 on their website. It comes in 3 beautiful colors of black, gold, and rose gold.
Beautiful. Looks like crap.
One of my favorite parts about this is that, yes, you will get a personalized letter from Donald Trump that is supposedly signed from him. It also features a clear case back, which is, if you want to think about it, it's the back of a watch, so you can see all the gears and stuff. But my favorite part about this is it has a personalized thank you message from Donald Trump that you can get on your case back. And the picture they have just says, was it
James,
let's think big, signed Donald Trump.
If I had the $100,000 to just waste, I would put my name as I lost the 2020 election.
But okay, if you can't pay the $100,000, don't worry. You can have their cheaper model for only $500.
Which actually looks better because it's silver.
And you get the Trump meme picture on the back of him like raising his fist, with the flag.
I see, yeah.
Also, I had a couple of things from their website in case you had some questions about the product. So, if I bought one, when will I get it? Well, from the website, they say the Trump Victory Tourbillon watches start shipping in October or November or December. The Fight watches, the cheaper watches, start shipping in October, November, or December. Shipping and delivery dates are estimates only and cannot be guaranteed. We are not liable for any delays in shipments. So who knows when you'll get your watch?
Some some point.
At some point.
Maybe.
But hey, will I get the exact watch I see advertised on the website? Quote, the images shown are for illustration purposes only and may not be an exact representation of the product.
AKA, we haven't made them yet.
Yeah. And don't worry, the website also states very proudly that they take Bitcoin, but only for the cheap watch. If you want to do it for the real watch, they do accept wire transfers. And finally, if you're like Jason and maybe a little bit skeptical and buy one and not like it,
and realize that they didn't put "I lost the 2020 election" on the back of it.
Yeah, there are no refunds and all sales are final.
Yeah, another crap product from a crap former president. Who continues to be a crap person.
I can't believe it. What a wild thing to do right before you're president.
I mean, this is what we want from our presidents, right?
Yeah, just hucking progs left and right.
Yeah, it's so just disgusting. He's a disgusting person. This is a disgusting product. His entire brand is disgusting. And the people that support him, also disgusting.
Incredible.
I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
On to our main subject of today, why progressives should vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. You wanted to start with someone that I've just barely heard of very recently, so I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, okay, Boomer. For those of you who don't know, there is a rising pop star. Her name is Chappell Roan, and she's been having a rough week. Like I said, I know a lot of you may not know or even care about who Chappell Roan is or what this drama may entail, but I think legitimately, this is a good example of what this episode is about. Last Friday, The Guardian released an interview with her where they talked about a bunch of stuff with her life and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really matter. But in it, she said...
You sound like such a big fan.
I'm not a big fan. I mean, yes, I am for the kids. Hey, I'm...
blah, blah, blah. Who cares about her life?
I'm with the skibbity, and I'm reeling in the Riz, I'm Sigma. He's still shaking his head at me, by the way.
I mean, I have heard all of these things, not in the wild, but just people reporting that this is
this is happening.
Yeah, like this is Gen Alpha lingo, so I do recognize it. I know Skibbity has something to do with a toilet.
Yeah,
for some
Skibbity
reason,
toilet.
But beyond that, and I mean, I know it also has a Half-Life connection, so there's that.
It's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, in that interview, she said that she was not endorsing Kamala Harris, causing a rage over the internet with her fans because she is actually a very, very known progressive and liberal woman. So after the firestorm, she took to TikTok to clarify her stance, where she said, I have so many issues with our government in every way. There are so many things that I would want to change, so I don't feel pressured to endorse someone. There's problems on both sides. I encourage people to use your critical thinking skills, use your vote small, vote for what's going on in your city.
I mean, I don't completely disagree with that. I don't think people should be forced to endorse a candidate, even if they agree with that candidate for the most part. I mean, she's not a politician. Right?
But I think a big problem was that she is a big advocate for trans rights, LGBTQ rights, and a lot of people heard, well, there's problems on both sides, which I think upsets us sometimes when we hear that as well. And
it's certainly not equal in any way, shape, or form, especially if that's your number one issue. And we will get to that later on specifically. But yeah, it's not the same. You would think you would certainly at least heavily favor one side.
Correct. Well, then after a second firestorm happened, she went to TikTok again to record another video to clarify, and this is the one that I want us to listen to. It is a 3-minute or so video. It's a bit rambly, but what I want you to do is understand that I think this is what a typical voter sees, especially a typical progressive voter who doesn't follow politics. So let's listen to it, and let's use this lens of understanding of how we should get progressives to vote for Kamala Harris.
I just woke up, and to people just skewing it even more, endorsing and voting are completely different. I don't agree with a lot of what is going on with policies. Obviously, the policies of the right, but also some of the policies on the left. That's why I can't endorse. That's why I can't put my entire name and my entire project behind one. Because there is no way I can stand behind some of the left's completely transphobic and completely genocidal views. So yeah, there are huge problems on both. You know what is right and wrong, and so do I. Fuck Trump for fucking real, but fuck some of the shit that has gone down in the Democratic Party that has failed people like me and you. And more so, Palestine. And more so, every marginalized community in the world. So no, I'm not gonna settle for what the options that are in front of me. And you're not gonna make me feel bad for that. So yeah, I'm voting for f***ing Kamala. But I'm not settling for what has been offered because that's questionable. It's questionable that our actions of our government, the actions of the internet, the actions of you and me. If this is what you are not understanding, you know what? Endorsing someone, if someone is publicly endorsing a political figure, that doesn't even mean that they're gonna f***ing vote for them. Because as I said in my other video, actions speak louder than words. And I'm not gonna let this narrative of like me not playing both sides. No. This is not me playing both sides. This is me questioning both sides because this is what we have in front of us. So if you look at my statement and you're still like, she's just playing both sides, like she doesn't wanna, no, you're not getting it. I'm critiquing both sides because they're both so fucked up. Voting is all we have right now in the system. And so I encourage it, yet again, vote for who in your mind is the best option for what we have right now. Because that's all we can do. And I hope this makes it clear that no, I'm not picking the sides of what we have right now. Yes, one's obviously better than the other. But Jesus fucking Christ, I hope you don't settle for what we have and put your name behind someone that you don't fully trust because of their blatant actions.
Okay, so I hadn't heard this before. I expected to be more irritated than ended up being. Like, I'm fine with that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think this is a good example of how someone on the progressive left is legitimately conflicted.
I mean, I don't care as long as you're going to vote for Kamala Harris. Beyond that, I don't care because I don't think it's that important that a pop star endorses or doesn't endorse somebody. I mean, personally, maybe I'm wrong in that. If you're saying, though, like, you recognize that Kamala Harris is the better choice of the two and that's who you're going to vote for, you're in the same place I am. You know, like, what candidate does the Think Progressively podcast endorse? We've never come out and said, right? Because who cares? Sure. Nobody cares. So yeah, she's got some things wrong. And when she originally starts talking about the left, I don't like that because that's not who you're talking about.
Right.
You're talking about liberals. You're talking about Democrats. You don't mean the left. You don't really understand what that means. The left does not support the genocide in Gaza. The left is not transphobic. You're getting those things mixed up. But then she does start saying Democrats and clarifies a little bit better. Yeah, are there things that Democrats do and the Democratic Party is supported that we don't agree with? Certainly. And I mean, Gaza would be number one on that list currently. I'm not really sure about transphobia. I mean, I don't know of anything currently. You can certainly go to the past, that's for sure. But current policies of the Democratic Party that are transphobic or anti-trans, you would have to really point it out to me.
I'm sure there's several moderates that are.
Sure, there's members, but they're not running for president.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, I don't really fundamentally disagree. At the end of the day, this sounds like a kid.
I think she's like early 20s, you know?
Right.
But that's where what I want to make clear about this, using this scenario, is I think the big reason why we're doing this episode is to keep progressives from staying on the couch and actually getting up and going to vote for Kamala Harris. Because for us and for like these guys, a lot of these people, like Chappell Roan did, fully recognize like they hate Trump. They realize Trump's a bad choice.
And she's a bit of a potty mouth, I will say. There's a lot of editing that I have to do.
I forgot about the language. I apologize. But I think the biggest obstacle for us trying to turn out progressives is making sure that, number one, they realize that they should still go out and vote, even if they don't necessarily like all the things that Kamala Harris does or stands for. And number two, that they should vote for the Democrat because throwing their vote away for like a third party is going to be meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
And
unless you're a Republican, then please vote RFK Jr.
Yeah, or Libertarian or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I heard a little bit at the end of her video, which is like, you know, voting's all we have. Make sure you vote vote for whoever you think is the best one. I'm like, yeah, we should vote for Kamala Harris. Like,
Right.
that's not an argument. Like, let's not even talk about like Jill Stein or whatever the hell the libertarian candidate is. It's got to be progressives showing up for Kamala Harris and then making the Democratic Party more progressive and liberal.
Right. And that's not what you're going to be able to do in the general presidential election. Those dies have already been cast.
Right. So let's look at Kamala Harris, her record, what she stands for, and give people reasons why to vote for Kamala Harris and not just against Donald Trump. Because I think that's where a lot of people still have issues with. And while, yes, an election is typically a comparison between two candidates, we're going to try to refrain from talking about Trump too much because we want people to focus mainly on Harris and Walz here. Even in polls today, everyone knows about Donald Trump, but people still want to learn more about Kamala Harris. So let's give you a little bit more about Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm. And we will include a link to their campaign website where Kamala Harris is in a unique position. She took over the campaign from Joe Biden very late and has not had a real opportunity to set a full platform, a full agenda that you normally would have at this point in the race. But if you go to her website, she does have what she calls a new way forward for the middle class, a plan to lower costs and create an opportunity economy, which is what she keeps saying, opportunity economy.
Yeah.
And it is a 82-page document on her website that you can read through if you choose to do so, if you want to know every
detail.
Right.
You know.
And it doesn't include everything. But so we've taken some of the points from that website that we found that would appeal to progressives. And we've also looked at interviews that she's done, other speeches that she's done, especially recently, where she is kind of quantifying her plan. That's what everyone says. Well, she doesn't have a plan. She doesn't have details. She's trying to do that currently while in the middle of campaigning, which I'm sure is very difficult.
Right. And well, can we just quickly take a quick detour on that as well? I mean, for the typical voter, I can see why they would do that. But for people who are actually engaged in politics, you know exactly what you're going to get out of a Kamala Harris presidency. Like, there are no real surprises anymore out of like Democrats. Does that make sense, Jason?
In a way.
Like, I mean, if it was someone like Bernie Sanders who was like really going to rock the boat.
Well, okay. So here's the thing, and I know this is getting into Republican talking points, but Kamala Harris ran as a progressive in 2020.
Now she's running more as a moderate.
And she is tacking more and more to the center during this election. So, it may be a question of, wait, is she for Medicare for all? The answer is not now because it wasn't popular. Because her campaign did not do well in 2020. She was the first candidate to drop out of that race. Trying to run as the progressive in a race with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, there was no space for her. And she was not as popular as they were. So it appears that those were never really her ideology. She tried to run that way because she felt like that was the lane that she might have some success in, and she was wrong. So I do think it is important to try to understand what her potential presidential agenda will look like. And we're only focusing on things that we agree with as progressives. So we don't have her stance on Gaza here. Because while I think she may be slightly better than Joe Biden, I don't think she is going to be a progressive when it comes to that. So that's not a reason why I would vote for her. Obviously, is she going to be better than Donald Trump? Yes, that goes without saying. But this is, at the end of the day, what do we like as progressives
about Kamala?
Yeah, that we can see in her campaign. So let's start with childcare. She is campaigning on restoring the child tax credit from the Biden administration and the earned income tax credit. She wants to expand the child tax credit for families with newborn children and cap family costs for childcare at 7% of annual income. The current costs can be as high as 19%, per a report from the U.S. Department of Labor estimates.
And the child tax credit was something that was incredibly popular when it first came out.
Mm-hmm.
And Democrats have been clamoring to get that back in for a while because it worked so well the last time.
It actually lowered childhood poverty by more than 50%. It was 5.2%, the lowest ever in 2021 while it was active. The child poverty rate rose to 12.4% in 2022 when that child tax credit expired. So yes, very important, very effective, and very popular. One of the biggest issues currently in America, abortion rights.
And I think this one's probably a given. Like, everyone probably knows what Kamala Harris is going to do about abortion. But I think what makes me really happy is in a recent Wisconsin Public Radio interview, or WPR interview, she said this about restoring Roe. I think we should eliminate the filibuster for Roe and get us to the point where 51 votes would be what we need to actually put back in law the protections for reproductive freedom and for the ability of every person and every woman to make decisions about their own body and not have to have their government tell them what to do. And the big part about that is that she's still willing to abolish the filibuster.
Something that Joe Biden would not do.
Correct. That makes me very happy. And I was very pleased to see that she would go that far to do that. And we've talked about the filibuster before in previous episodes and how much we absolutely hate it.
It makes sure that nothing ever gets done.
Correct. So I'm very happy to see that even though she's running to the center on a lot of issues, she's still willing to go for the abolish the filibuster route to also make sure that her agenda gets passed. So that makes me very happy. Also, I just want to throw in that Manchin saw this.
Joe Manchin.
Thank you. Sorry. Yep. Joe Manchin from West Virginia saw this and got really upset with her and said that it should be, or that she should be embarrassed and shame on her for saying such a horrible thing about the filibuster. And if you know if Joe Manchin's upset, we're good to go.
She is the only vice president to tour an abortion clinic. She has said that she would sign legislation codifying abortion rights into law and veto any federal abortion ban. She's also vowed to protect access to abortion medication and IVF treatments.
I think that's also especially important now when now you see Republicans going after IVF the way they are.
And access to
medication too.
Right, like mifepristone, even contraception.
Yeah. I mean, and we knew this was going to happen. Like
Clarence Thomas spilled it out.
Right. Anyone who's been paying attention already knew that they were not going to stop at whatever Trump's been saying, which is sending it back to the states. They want an all-out abortion ban, and then they want to go on and get rid of contraception as well, because they think that's also against God too.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the economy. In a recent speech on her economic vision in Pittsburgh, she outlined her economic plan for her presidency, including a new 25% minimum tax on people with fortunes exceeding 100 million, basically a wealth tax, which progressives have been pushing for some time. And that also includes a tax on unrealized capital gains, which is basically the new scam that rich people have been doing for a while now. We have a whole episode on it. I think it's the Why Billionaires Shouldn't Exist episode. So it's a huge tax loophole. It's basically why these millionaires and billionaires end up paying nothing in tax, and this would help to close that loophole. So it's very important. Harris also said that she wants to increase the long-term capital gains tax for those earning over $1 million a year to 28%. I know we don't want to talk about Donald Trump too much in this, but just to put that 28% in perspective, Donald Trump wants the long-term capital gains tax to be reduced to 15%. So almost half of what Kamala Harris is proposing.
Which would just widen the wealth and income disparity even more.
Right. And speaking of that, Harris also proposed increasing the corporate tax rate to also 28%.
Not to be confused with
right, which we did a little bit. The corporate gains tax, so both be the same. This would partially reverse Donald Trump's cut during his presidency, like the one thing that he did during his first term, which dropped the corporate tax rate from 35% to its current 21%, the largest decrease in the corporate tax rate in American history. Kamala Harris is also proposing the first ever federal ban on price gouging on food and groceries, which her campaign says aims to stop big corporations from unfairly exploiting consumers while generating excessive corporate profits. And I have heard a lot of people express, like, well, how could she possibly do that? Donald Trump called it like a communist plan, but there are actually currently both Democrat and Republican bills in the Senate that may provide the framework for that proposal. Harris's economic plan will also quadruple the tax rate on corporate stock buybacks to encourage businesses to invest in growth and productivity.
And that's like one of the big things we've been talking about before with these tax cuts.
Right. That's what corporations did with that largest ever corporate tax cut in history from Donald Trump. They did not give any of that money to their employees. They instead used those giant, like $1 trillion savings to buy back stock and give that money to their shareholders.
Correct. So this would be a great way to make sure that big and large companies and corporations actually invest in the communities around them.
And we move to housing. The Harris-Walz administration proposes building 3 million affordable housing units within 4 years.
This has been a big talking point of hers.
To create a tax incentive to build homes that are affordable to first-time buyers, expanding an incentive to build affordable rental homes, and setting up a $40 billion innovation fund for developers and builders who come up with viable plans to add affordable housing. They would also give up to $25,000 in down payment assistance to first-time homebuyers, and Harris has endorsed a bill called Stop the Predatory Investing Act that would create tax penalties for investors who buy large numbers of rental units, which is basically a plague on our country at the moment.
Yeah.
And we talked about it with like what the actual issues are in Springfield that they're dealing with the increase in population from the Haitian immigrants is the price of housing is becoming completely unaffordable because it's all being bought up by these outside businesses.
Correct. And you're seeing that also like in places like Arizona and Texas where big, large entities are just buying up everything in the market and just sending these prices skyrocketing. Harris also recently said, quote, "I have a plan to take on corporate landlords. They have to be held accountable. We've seen it so many places around our country. These corporations come in, they buy up a bunch of property, and then they jack up the prices. It becomes too expensive for people to actually be able to afford to live where they work and where they want to live." I also wanted to include that just because I know Jason hates landlords. Next up, we have workers' rights. And we already talked about how in previous episodes, Joe Biden has been now known as the most pro-labor president in modern history. I firmly believe that Harris will continue that trend even more so than Joe Biden will. During a speech to the American Federation of Teachers, Harris pledged to sign the Protecting the Right to Organize, or PRO Act, which I believe we've talked about in previous episodes as well. This is one of the most sought after bills by workers' rights activists and unions since being introduced in 2019. I'll also include us in that list as well. I'm a big fan of the PRO Act, especially here in Wisconsin, where unions have been devastated since the Act 10 thing from Scott Walker. It would severely weaken states' right to work laws, which I think we've talked about also, and create better protections for workers to unionize and negotiate with their employers. It's because of her and Joe Biden's support that they receive the vast majority of support from labor unions. And I want to make sure that we also recognize, even though, again, I'm trying hard to stick to Kamala Harris here, but Republicans and Donald Trump, and I guess J.D. Vance, are trying to make a play to say that they're actually the workers' candidates, which is the most outlandish thing I've ever heard, outside of the cats and dogs thing. So don't get bought up in all the chaos and rhetoric. Democrats, and specifically Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and definitely Tim Walz, are the definite choice if you want workers' rights protections.
And let's move to voting rights. The Harris-Walz administration supports the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and Freedom to Vote Act. These would restore sections of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that the Supreme Court has struck down or weakened, set a floor for voting access in federal elections, meaning states could enact more inclusive procedures, but not less inclusive ones, expand automatic voter registration programs to let all voters register online and on Election Day.
God, that'd be amazing.
Require at least 15 days of early voting, and restore voting rights to felons upon their release from prison. It would restrict partisan gerrymandering and allow voters to sue if election officials refuse to certify results, and establish a nationwide voter identification requirement, which I'm less excited about. The ID requirement would accept a wider range of documents, like utility bills, than many existing state laws allow. Also, I wanted to include some progressive policies from the Biden administration that Kamala Harris has supported. The $20 billion in spending for renewable energy subsidies and climate projects, which was the largest investment in clean energy in American history. Like we talked about, the child tax credit that lowered childhood poverty by more than 50%, expanding Medicare access and allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices, capping insulin costs at $35, which for some reason a former president keeps trying to take credit for, but actually happened during the Biden administration. And speaking of administrations.
Oh, good job. That was a good thing.
because I think this is important. Progressives are concerned that Kamala Harris is too moderate, that she's been pushing more and more moderate during this general election. Now, if you remember, Joe Biden was the most centrist candidate on the Democratic side in 2020.
Yes.
He ended up with one of the most progressive administrations
In history.
Yes, much more so than Barack Obama's, who was seen as a much, much more progressive candidate. So your administration, the people that you bring in along with you, much like we talked about last week with Project 2025, where they outlined the plan to completely replace the entirety of the federal workers with just absolute conservative hacks. The administration you bring in with you makes a huge difference. And I will say, we don't know and we can't really predict who Kamala Harris is going to bring in
for all these like secretarial appointments and things like that.
But I at least want to point out that her first choice, the one thing that we've seen so far, her VP pick was Tim Walz, who was the most progressive of any of the candidates that were proposed. Now, he did start off as a centrist while running for governor in Minnesota, but as soon as he got a majority in the Minnesota legislature, he passed some of the most progressive legislation anywhere in the country. And I include an article that has links to all the bills and everything in case you want to verify any of this information. But it's important that she chose Tim Walz. She did not choose Josh Shapiro or Mark Kelly.
Which I think both should, we talked about before, but with Josh Shapiro, he would have been more hawkish with Israel. And Mark Kelly had many issues, like with the filibuster. He had issues with the child's tax credit. He did not want to do the child tax credit again. Like stuff like that.
And Josh Shapiro was a pro
voucher.
School voucher program.
So picking Tim Walz is a huge, huge win for progressives.
So since Tim Walz is a big part of this administration, I do want to go over some of the things that he did as governor of Minnesota. Maybe Chapel Roan should listen to this first one. Tim Walz signed the Trans Refuge Bill, making Minnesota a safe haven for the trans community. It prohibited enforcing out-of-state subpoenas, arrest warrants, and extradition requests, like the law they passed in Florida, that if you provided gender-affirming care for your child, Florida could sue you and take custody of your child. Only bill in the country like this, signed in Minnesota.
So good job, Tim Walz.
He also signed a bill enshrining abortion rights into law. Minnesota was the first state to do so following the Dobbs decision. They legalized recreational cannabis under his administration. Seems like that's an old thing that's already everywhere, but as residents of Wisconsin, we can tell you not so much, especially in the Midwest. They allowed driver's licenses for all residents of Minnesota, regardless of immigration status, which again we've talked about previously in our episode. I believe it was titled How Wisconsin Holds Immigrants Hostage, something like that.
And how driver's licenses are a huge problem in Wisconsin, or a lack of, I should say.
That it basically very much brings down the quality of life for our large amount of immigrant workers that are here propping up our economy in Wisconsin, but yet they can't get driver's license, which really puts them under the heel of the farmers that they work for unnecessarily. So good to see Minnesota do that. I really wish we would do something like that here. They also have automatic voter registration, which was passed under Tim Walz, paid family and medical leave, and free lunch for all public school children. What are we doing here in Wisconsin, man? We really, really need to work.
Man, can you believe it? Like, that's right across the border.
Yes.
Same thing with Illinois. Like, they're right there. We're so close to them, Jason.
But yet, in a lot of ways, so far away. So yes, we have a lot of work to do when it comes to fixing our legislature. And hopefully that will start with this election. As there, you probably want to listen to Chapel Roan, where she said, start local. That definitely, I would like that message to go out to all of our Wisconsin listeners, that look at what they were able to accomplish in Minnesota and what we could do here if we threw out our conservative legislature.
Right. And I mean, now is our chance to do it. So you should vote.
Now, this one I threw in here. There's no way to know, again, what's going to happen with the Harris administration, but probably the highlight of the Biden administration, Lena Khan as the FTC chair. And this came because of the unity coalition that Biden put together between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren when Biden was taking office. This was Elizabeth Warren's pick for FTC chair. She's probably been the most important progressive and important member of the Biden administration. She halted multiple mergers by large corporations, saving thousands of jobs and millions of dollars for Americans. I can say my personal experience under the Trump administration, when the merger for Charter and Time Warner Cable went through, I lost my job. And I don't know, has your cable bill gone down any since then?
And the quality has been going higher, too. It's gotten cheaper and better quality.
Right. So that's what they always say the reasons for mergers are. And instead, it just means higher profits and firing workers and gouging consumers for more money. Always. It's always the way it works out. So I'm always excited to see when the FTC puts a stop to these kinds of mergers, because it's always better for the American people. And we've never seen an FTC be this active and really have the
balls to do something.
Right. And have the betterment of the American people in mind.
Right. Well, and that's where I think this is a good example of people are begging the government to do something, right? Like, you have a very common problem that many Americans can realize is a common problem. And while they may not understand how to fix it, they at least recognize that it's a problem. And they just want the government to do something about it. And usually they just don't. Mm-hmm. They just let it be because they're worried about overstepping.
Well, and they're former corporate lawyers,
right,
that are never working in the best interests of the people. They're always working in the best interests of the corporations.
Right.
And this is the first time that I know of that we've had an FTC chair that openly goes against that.
Just flips them the bird, man. It's awesome.
They've actively been enforcing antitrust laws. There's a lawsuit going on with Amazon currently. That hasn't happened since the Microsoft antitrust suit.
Yeah.
In the, late 90s, early 2000s. Now, Lena Khan's status is unknown in the Harris administration, and unfortunately, multiple billionaire donors have demanded that she be removed for, quote, waging war on corporations. That is a quote from the LinkedIn CEO, who is a billionaire donor to Kamala Harris. And to that, I say, good.
So keep that in mind as you watch out for things. If Lena Khan's still there, things are in the right direction.
Yes.
And then inversely,
the least progressive person that we know of in the Biden administration, Antony Blinken, U.S. Secretary of State. He is a war criminal, constantly lying to the American people and enabling an Israeli genocide of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. He has said that he would not stay on to serve under Kamala Harris if she is elected. And again, we say to that, good.
Bye-bye.
He's
been terrible.
Yes. And like we said, just constantly lying about everything when it comes to Israel and Gaza, refuses to accept the International Criminal Court's findings.
There was a recent ProPublica article that I think we were even talking about how, he's like just flat out just going against saying, we don't believe what they're finding.
Right.
Like, what are we doing?
That's not, our findings don't corroborate theirs. Well, what investigation did we do?
None.
Yeah.
I mean, all this money we
asked Benjamin Netanyahu, and he said no.
Yeah, ridiculous, man. So that's also a good indicator. If Tony Blinken's staying around,
right,
that's a bad sign.
Right, and he said he would not be. So that, I think, should tell you something.
I agree.
So there you have it. It's abridged, but that is the best we can do in our allotted time of our case. For if you're progressive and you're struggling for reasons to vote for Kamala Harris,
they are not just voting against Donald Trump. Here they are.
Right.
Like, they are legitimate, real plans that will help benefit our country. And now you can take this to people and say, no, there are real things that my candidate is doing that I like. It's not that, was the typical mantra, orange man bad.
Right.
That most Republicans are saying in defense. I should also say, like, even though Kamala Harris has been in the race in way less time than Donald Trump has, she already is talking way more about plans than Trump has been. Like, Trump has Jack, which I think we'll cover in a future episode as well. But keep that in mind too. Don't fall for the nonsense of like nitpicking all the crazy, like you can be as critical as you want of Kamala Harris's plans, but don't fall for the double standard that you should nitpick the Democrats like crazy and then allow Republicans to get away scot-free with zero plans at all.
They literally did not even have a party platform 4 years ago.
Right.
Under Donald Trump.
Well, and was it the last episode we did that had the like 6 or 8 years of Donald Trump saying we'll have a healthcare plan in 2 weeks?
Right.
So I mean, like it's the same stuff over and over again. So these are real tangible reasons why you and all your progressive friends, and that you should tell your progressive friends why you should vote for Kamala Harris. So otherwise, that's all we got for this week. We'll see you next week with the vice presidential debate. And hopefully it'll be just as much fun as the Kamala Harris and Donald Trump one. See you next time, everybody.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively.
You also forgot yacht.